The Home Mortgage Law Show is a paid program and is intended as a resource guide for education, information, and entertainment purposes and is not intended to provide specific legal advice. The information that you hear should not be used as a substitute for competent legal advice from a professional attorney. Hiring of an attorney is an important decision which should not be based on advertising or the information that you hear today.
Good afternoon and welcome to the Home Mortgage Law Show, brought to you by the law offices of Morris DuPont. We have a full house today. Attorneys Will Morris, Shay DuPont, and Michelle Hanash, our bankruptcy attorney, joined by George Fajardo, Director of Loss Mitigation, which can only mean one thing. We do have a rocky segment today. We'll tell you all about that coming up. You're listening to us on our flagship station, News Radio 610 WIOD and News Radio 970 WFLA. The number is the same to call and talk to the experts right here on the show. It's toll free, 866-610-6397. That's 866-610-NEWS. AT&T Wireless customer star 610. And if you're on Facebook, make sure you log on and like our page, The Home Mortgage Law Show, sponsored by Morris DuPont, PA.
You know, tomorrow is Mother's Day. Very excited about that. Happy Mother's Day to all the lovely mothers out there. You know, there's one thing that you could do for your mother, for your wife, for your daughter, and that would be something that you would really appreciate, and that is help her to take a look at the value of her property and how many mortgages they have on that property and what the amount of those mortgages are, and analyze the property and see if there might be some options for the lovely lady in your life to help her to lower the monthly mortgage payment. And how could you do that? Well, with a loan modification. So let's step back and say, how can I analyze the lady in my life's property for her? Well, you want to start out by knowing what the current market value of the property is. And although a lot of people think that the value of the property is the property tax value, that is not true, folks. Your property tax value is normally lower than the true current market value of the property. So you want to use some resources out there to determine what is the current market value of the property. We use websites such as Zillow, ZILLOW.com. We use Trulia, TRULIA.com. And we also use the Chase Home Evaluator. So you can, is it evaluator or estimator, George?
Value estimator.
Okay, so we use the Chase Home Estimator. And if you use those keywords, that will come up. And you plug in the home address, and voila, you will get an estimate of the current market value of the property. The second thing to do is take a look at the mortgage statement. What does it show as the principal balance of the mortgage? If the principal balance of the mortgage is actually more than the current market value of the property, well, maybe what you want to be giving as a gift for Mother's Day is offering to contact the law firm of Morris DuPont, arranging a consultation for that lovely lady in your life, and seeing whether or not we can qualify that property for a loan modification. A loan modification is where your lender agrees to modify certain terms of your existing mortgage, and that will result in a lowering of your monthly mortgage payment. Now, what terms can the lender actually modify? Well, they can modify the interest rate. So if when you look at that mortgage statement for your lovely lady, she's got a 6.25% interest rate, well, how would you like to see that lowered to 2%? That'd be a lovely gift, wouldn't it? Can you imagine a 2% interest rate on your mortgage? You can't get that by refinancing. The second thing that the lender can modify is the term of the mortgage. Maybe you've been in the home for 8 years, you've got 22 years left on the mortgage. Imagine if the lender extended that mortgage back out to 30 years, maybe even 40 years. That would result in a great savings by lowering, again, your monthly mortgage payment. So there's one more term that your lender can actually modify, and that is the principal balance. Yes, believe it or not, lenders today are actually forgiving some amount of principal balance. If you owe $350,000 on that property, and the actual current market value of that property is $200,000, did you know that your lender might be willing to actually forgive $150,000 of that mortgage. It's true, principal balances are more and more common today. And by actually forgiving principal, you can then, again, lower that monthly mortgage payment. An average loan modification results in a lowering of a monthly mortgage payment by approximately 30%. Imagine that if you have a mortgage that is $3,000 every month, and you could lower that to $2,000 every month. Imagine the savings, and imagine how appreciative that lovely lady in your life would be if you could get her another $12,000 of money every year by participating, contacting Morris DuPont, scheduling that conference. Remember, it's free, and seeing whether or not we can qualify that lovely lady in your life for an actual loan modification. So if you haven't taken advantage yet and you're interested in a loan modification, if you're interested in a Mother's Day gift that will keep on giving, don't forget, we're right here. Free consultation, the law firm of Morris DuPont. We have offices available in St. Petersburg, Tampa, Dadeland, Doral, Aventura, Fort Lauderdale, Boca Raton, West Palm Beach, and Plantation. So make the call, see what we can do. If it's not a loan modification, let's talk about some of those investment properties you have. George, we're doing more and more loan modifications with investment properties. You might not think that an investment property can qualify for a loan modification. Absolutely not true. We're seeing more and more people analyzing those investment properties that they have and realizing they're not such a good investment anymore. It's time to analyze whether or not you should be either trying to modify the terms of the mortgages on those investment properties or actually doing a short sale.
Especially now that the HAMP guidelines have been expanded to include investment properties through their second tier program.
So you could actually see an investment property mortgage interest rate reduced all the way to 2% under the HAMP guidelines. That's the Home Affordable Modification Program sponsored by the Department of Treasury that now allows for loan modifications through that HAMP program on investment properties. So if you have been actually being out of pocket on that investment property, hoping that the current market value will eventually rise, well, guess what? There's another alternative to make that an income-producing property again, and that is by getting a loan modification on that investment property. And you have a second mortgage on a property? No worries. Loan modifications are available on second mortgages, but more importantly, on an unsecured second mortgage, that is a mortgage that is no longer secured by the property because the current market value of the property has actually dipped down below the value of the first mortgage, making the second mortgage unsecured because there's no equity in the property for it to attach to. We're actually seeing lenders forgiving the entire amount of the second mortgage. There's so many options out there waiting for you. Give us a call and let's explore them together.
And that number is 1-800-974-2712. 800-974-2712. Free consultation at the law offices of Morris DuPont. The phone lines are starting to ring. John from St. Pete, you're going to be next right after the break here on the Home Mortgage Law Show. You're listening to the Home Mortgage Law Show, brought to you by the law offices of Morris DuPont. Attorneys Will Morris, Shay DuPont, Michelle Hanash, our bankruptcy attorney, and George Fajardo, director of loss mitigation. We also have a special someone here in the studio with us, and that's Ziona Kopelovich.
Kopelovich. Really?
Who's also our bankruptcy attorney in the Tampa area.
Absolutely. Michelle, it's always good to see you here because I know you've always got some pearls of wisdom regarding bankruptcy. And, of course, George is here with a rocky segment today. We're going to be talking about loan modification today?
A loan modification, yeah.
Bravo. I know we've got John on the phone from St. Pete. Let's go to the phones.
Hi, John.
Hi, John.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
I have a question about statute of limitations. I've been defending a foreclosure for a little over 3 years now, and they're not even anywhere close to being successful against me because of problems that they've had. What is exactly, could you explain and talk about the statute of limitations? What happens if, say, the case is dismissed and there's no action brought after that fact, even if it's dismissed with prejudice or without prejudice?
Thank
What
goodness my
happens
partner Will Morris is here to answer questions
Right,
like that.
right. Statute of limitations, that generally refers to the time period within which a person is required to commence a lawsuit. And in foreclosure cases, the statute of limitation is 5 years, meaning that the bank has a 5-year period from when you actually default on the mortgage. Actually, that's not really true. I did some research last week on that very question to determine when the statute of limitation actually starts to run. Apparently, there's an older case that holds the position that the statute of limitation starts running from the time the bank accelerates the full balance of the mortgage. Now, that makes sense to me because if you think about it, if it's not from that point and every month you miss and don't make a payment, then that could potentially start a whole new statute of limitations running towards that particular payment. Now, if the statute starts running, as I believe is the right answer, from the time the bank accelerates the full balance and are no longer accepting monthly payments, then 5 years from that point, the bank has to file a lawsuit. Now, if within the 5-year period the bank does file a lawsuit, that obviously tolls the running of the statute of limitations, and it doesn't matter how long the case takes to get resolved, then the statute of limitation is tolled. Now, in your particular situation, let's assume that for some reason, whatever reason, the court dismisses the lawsuit without prejudice. Obviously, if it's done with prejudice, then they can't refile. Okay? Now, if the court dismisses the lawsuit and the statute of limitations has already started running from the time the bank accelerated the full balance of the mortgage, then that 5-year period within which the bank is supposed to file a lawsuit continues running, irrespective of the fact that they already filed a lawsuit. Okay? So they have to file the lawsuit within that 5-year period and see it all the way through. Now, if they don't file a lawsuit, refile a new lawsuit within that 5-year period, then you have a defense of statute of limitations, which can then cause the lawsuit to be dismissed.
I understand. And then at that point, what happens?
Here's the interesting point. Even though the bank cannot thereafter file a lawsuit against you either on the note or to foreclose on the property, the lien remains on the property, right? The lien that's represented by the mortgage remains on the property. And at any point when you're looking to sell that property, you're going to have to resolve that lien somehow with the bank.
Right.
And I would imagine at that point, the bank is going to say, well, pay me the full amount you owe me, right? In order for me to release the lien so you can sell the property.
Right.
So, I mean,
So
even though
it basically sits in limbo if you get to that point.
Absolutely. Now, I've heard people throw out the concept, well, we could always file a quiet title action and tell the court that, well, because the bank can no longer foreclose on the mortgage or foreclose on the lien on the property, then that lien should be extinguished. Well, I strongly doubt whether any court is going to extinguish that lien and give your house free and clear. Besides, there's also a concept of an equitable lien. Even though there's no real lien that the bank could foreclose on, there's an equitable lien or a lien, equitable or otherwise, on the property that has to be satisfied if you're looking to then transfer title free and clear of that lien to a third party.
Right. Okay.
So what's going on with your property, John?
I've just been defending a foreclosure for some time with another law firm, and I was just curious about that because it's something that you hear people talk about and you never get a solid answer.
Right. I hear talk all the time about people, oh, well, we should file a quiet title lawsuit. I'm still waiting to see somebody succeed in that. I sincerely doubt whether any court is going to give somebody a property free and clear just because the bank can no longer, because of the statute of limitation, foreclose on the property.
I think there have been a couple of actions where they've been successful, and the only reason that they were successful...
The bank didn't answer.
Yes, exactly.
The
Timing.
bank didn't respond. Right,
yeah.
right. The bank got defaulted.
Yeah.
Right.
And John,
Okay, well,
what's your end game, John? What's the goal? Do you want to try and keep the property?
Well, at this point, my property is I am in an area where I bought in 2006. And you're talking about a difference. I'm about 50%, or actually 100% upside down, if you want to count it that way, if you want to reverse. But I mean, I paid $300,000 for the property. It's worth about $145.
And is it a Fannie or a Freddie loan? Do you know?
No, it's a conventional.
Can you qualify for a loan modification and see if it can include a principal reduction?
That would be, I mean, I'm being realistic here. I mean, you're talking a realistic principal reduction in my eyes is over $100,000, because I just can't fathom paying the amount of the loan based on what it's like throwing hole in, a boat has always been told it's a hole in the water that you throw money into. Well, right now this house is a hole in the ground in which I'd be throwing money into.
Right.
Right,
but still,
a 100,000 or 150,000 principal reduction is not unrealistic.
Right.
A loan modification is based on your gross monthly income. If you're making $5,000 a month, then your monthly housing expense, that is principal, interest, taxes, insurance, and homeowners association fee, should be about $1,500 a month. If the lender has to reduce principal to create a payment that will equal $1,500 a month, they do it.
Okay.
So, I think it's worth exploring. It's great to have a foreclosure defense attorney. Obviously, yours has been doing a great job. You've got 3 years in the property. But my question is with people who just have someone who just does foreclosure defenses, okay, that's great, but what's the end game here? What's the goal?
What's the exit strategy?
Well, my end game originally when I started with this is eventually just be able to get a deed in lieu of foreclosure and walk away from the property. But there's been some inequities found within the foreclosure process that they've basically, I don't want to say committed fraud on the court, but there's been some problems and they haven't moved forward. They haven't responded to any of the motions from my attorney. So
wow.
Well, at some point,
basically they've just extended their time on the case by doing things like changing counsel and things of that nature.
Right,
There's been
right.
nothing
Well,
really substantial being submitted to the court on their side for the past year and a half.
I think you should really consider what Shay is saying. At some point, assuming we have to assume the bank is going to get its act together, and this foreclosure lawsuit is going to come to a head, and you have to make a decision of what you do then. I mean, looking into the possibility of a modification at this point might not be a bad strategy to implement.
Okay.
And as far as the deed in lieu goes, a lot of people out there love the idea of deed in lieu. Wouldn't it be great if at the end of the whole thing, you could just mail the keys to your lender and walk away? But it doesn't work like that. The lender is not in the real estate business. They do not want your property. They want you to sell the property for them, and they get the proceeds, the purchase proceeds, wired to them. That's what they want. So if you're thinking of the end game as exiting the property, you've got to be thinking short sale and looking for a deficiency waiver on the outstanding principal balance that the purchase contract's not going to cover. So deed in lieu, very, very, very difficult process. We don't do many of them. The lenders don't like them. They drag them on when we can get a short sale done in 3 or 4 months.
Well, and the reason we don't do that many of them is because one of the requirements for the lender to even consider a deed in lieu is that you must list the property for a minimum period of 3 months before you can even make that request. And in our case, within that 3 months, we usually end up with a contract. So we do a lot more short sales than deed in lieu.
Oh, yeah. Well, John, we wish you all the best, but feel free to take advantage of the consultation. We'll sit down and, bring in a most recent pay stub or, let us know if you're self-employed, and we'll sit there and just let you know what we think could be possible with your property.
Well, I appreciate the info.
Sure.
And you guys have a good day.
Thanks, John.
Thanks
You
for
too.
calling.
The number to call, 800-974-2712. That's 800-974-2712. Oh, I'm sorry, Natalie. I'm getting mixed signals here. I wanted to talk also about the offices that we have where you can take advantage of that free consultation. Remember, we've got offices in West Palm Beach, Boca Raton, Plantation, Fort Lauderdale, Aventura, Dadeland, Doral, Tampa, and St. Petersburg. Happy to meet anyone over there. I was in the St. Pete office and the Tampa office this past week. Enjoyed meeting lots of good folks over there. That myth about the deed in lieu, always people are bringing it up. Well, I'm just going to do a deed in lieu at the end. Remember, a deed in lieu, you've got to be able to also transfer clear title over to a lender that you are going to deed that property to. If you have a second mortgage on that property, if you've got an IRS lien that's unresolved, if you've got any sort of lien on that property other than a clear first mortgage, you are not going to be able to deed in lieu a property. We've got other options available for you. Give us a call and we'll explain them all.
And that number is 800-974-2712. 1-800-974-2712. The law offices of Morris DuPont. Free consultation, one phone call away. 800-974-2712. The Home Mortgage Law Show continues right after this. listening to the Home Mortgage Law Show, brought to you by the law offices of Morris DuPont. Attorneys Will Morris, Shay DuPont, Michelle Hanash, our bankruptcy attorney, and George Fajardo, director of loss mitigation, in the house also with us. Attorney Ziona Kopelovic here joining us this afternoon. We are taking calls, and it's toll free to call the studio. 866-610-NEWS. That's 866-610-6397. Feel free to call with your concerns, your questions, your doubts, or if you have a friend or a neighbor who is going through a rough time with their foreclosure or they just need some answers. 866-610-NEWS. 866-610-6397. AT&T Wireless customer star 610.
Well, you know, when they say the check is in the mail,
It really is, Shay. Isn't
it
it?
really is this time. You know, the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency announced that the fourth round of checks from the foreclosure review settlement were sent out on Friday, May 3rd. So, folks, you should have gotten your checks by now. The most recent batch includes 200,000 checks totaling more than $224 million. That brings the overall total to 3.9 million checks that were sent out for a total of $3.4 billion sent out to homeowners whose properties were foreclosed on between 2009 and 2010. So if you had previously gotten the postcard from Russ Consulting saying that you were eligible and you would be receiving a check and you haven't received it yet, you better
The check
call.
is in the mail.
Your check is in the mail. Hopefully it didn't get lost, and you can always call Rust Consulting to double check and make sure that check was sent out and see if there needs to be a trace on it. Rust Consulting, I'm going to give you the phone number for them. That's 888-952-9105. And there's Natalie over there clicking on her on her keyboard. She's probably going to post that on our
There you
Facebook
go.
It's probably already posted.
Yeah, on our Facebook page. Remember, the Home Mortgage Law Show has its own Facebook page, and that would be the Home Mortgage Law Show, sponsored by Morris DuPont. So you can check out our Facebook page. That's where we post all the articles that we read during the week to keep you informed every Saturday. And that's one of the articles on there. So you want to make sure if you were eligible for one of those checks and you haven't received it yet, maybe you should call Russ Consulting and see exactly where that check is. If you got that check, probably in an amount somewhere around $300 to $1,000, hopefully you're spending it on your mom on Mother's Day tomorrow. I know that we've got Freddie Mac was reporting their second largest income to date. And that's without doing principal reductions. Imagine how that money could have been spent. Freddie Mac posted its first quarter net income this past week, and it is $4.6 billion. Imagine if they'd have just spent $1 billion of that giving people that have Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac loans principal reductions. Imagine the amount of people that would not be in default on their mortgage, that would be paying on time again and be able to keep their home. I would love to see that happen. There's actually a little glimmer, little hope there that we might actually see some change in the Federal Housing Finance Authority, because President Obama has announced that he has nominated a new proposed head of the Federal Housing Finance Authority. And his name is...
I thought it was...
let's see. I'm sorry, I lost my page.
I got it here.
Thank you,
Melvin
Robin.
Watt.
That's it. That's the one. There, I have it now. Absolutely. And he is a congressman from North Carolina?
Yes, that's correct.
Democrat from North
Democrat
Carolina.
from North Carolina, who's been instrumental in passing the Dodd-Frank, the financial regulatory overhaul enacted in 2010. And he apparently, they're saying he's going to have some problems being confirmed, but he's the president's nominee, and he's the guy who we hope will go forward and allow for principal reductions on the Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae loans.
My fingers are crossed, number one, that he gets nominated, because I know for him it's a
he's
big
nominated,
hurdle.
you mean confirmed.
I mean, confirmed.
Right.
Thank you, Will. That he's confirmed, because I know it's a big hurdle to pass over, because he has in the past talked about his support of principal reduction. So if we could just get Edward DeMarco out there. Remember, folks, if you are considering a loan modification, you want to make sure that your loan is if you want to check and see if it's a Fannie or a Freddie Mac loan. How do you do that? Use these keywords, Freddie Mac loan lookup or Fannie Mae loan lookup on your computer. The first site that you should have appear is typically the government website. Click through, put in your information. They typically ask for your name, your address, last 4 digits of your social. Click through, and the website will tell you if Fannie or Freddie own your note. If they do, yes, you can qualify for a principal reduction. Yes, you can qualify for a loan modification, but it can't include a principal reduction. And screening those things such as, is your loan a Fannie Freddie? Is it with a lender who does principal reductions for a loan modification? That's just some of the things that we do in a consultation with the law firm of Morris DuPont. Remember, you can schedule your free consultation. Come on in. We will sit down with you. We will figure out if your loan is a Fannie Freddie. I'm going to give you the phone number to call the office to schedule that consultation. We figure out what the current market value is. We look at your monthly income. What's your 31%? What does 31% mean?
What does 31% mean, Shay?
31% is what a lender will typically modify your monthly housing expense to. 31% of your gross monthly income. The example I always use, if your household income is $5,000 a month, then you should have a housing expense of 31% of $5,000, approximately $1,530, I think, per month. What does that $1,530 supposed to represent? Principal, interest, taxes, insurance, and homeowners association fee. So if those 5 factors bundled together equals more than 31% of your gross monthly income, ding, 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 you can qualify for a loan modification, and it quite possibly could include a reduction of the principal balance of your mortgage if you have a mortgage that is currently more than the current market value of your property. But you don't have to worry about all that. Here's the number. Give us a call and schedule your free consultation, and we'll calculate all of that for you. The number is 800-974-2712. George, I know we've got a Rocky segment coming up in the next segment. We're going to be talking about a loan modification?
Yes, we got an excellent result on a loan modification with a little bit of a twist, because this is a great case where the client followed our instructions to the T, did a rolling 30, and was able to get a loan modification in a very short period of time and avoid a lot of the pitfalls that come with a foreclosure action filed against them.
Very minimal hit to a credit score if you can accomplish getting a loan modification by doing a rolling 30. What's a rolling 30? It's where you have to miss a mortgage payment, but you go back the next month to making the payment on time. So you're always a month behind on your mortgage payment. You have a late fee that you have to pay, but that allows the lender to take you out of imminent default by claiming you have a hardship into an actual default status, resulting in a better chance of you qualifying for that loan modification. It's tricky. It's really playing it close to the line. You've got to know what you're doing to be able to accomplish a rolling 30-day loan modification. But thank goodness the Loss Mitigation Department at Morris DuPont, run by George Fajardo here, is able to do that so we can get loan modifications with a minimal impact on your credit score. We've got some phone calls.
We have 1 minute. Thomas, welcome to the show.
Hi, Thomas.
Hi there.
Hi, what can we do for you today?
I've got a friend of mine that lost her husband, a veteran, about a year ago.
Oh, I'm sorry.
They had a house together. They had a house together, and was down to 12 years on the mortgage. She wasn't making a lot of money at the time, and with the expense of his, sickness and everything, she got behind, and the bank that had it turned around and sold the mortgage to Bank B, let's say. Well, now Bank B wants to foreclose on the property, and she's tried to get him to, take her payments and add them on the end of the note or something like that.
Well, it's not quite that easy, but we've got to take a break. So we're going to come back. I want to hear about it because just from what I've heard already, I think we might be able to help.
You're listening to the Home Mortgage Law Show, 1-800-974-2712. That's the number for a free consultation. More of the Home Mortgage Law Show after this. And you're listening to the Home Mortgage Law Show, brought to you by the law offices of Morris DuPont. Attorneys Will Morris, Shay DuPont, Michelle Hanash, our Director of Loss Mitigation, George Fajardo, and our special guest, Attorney Ziona Kopelovic. We are taking some calls, and then right after that, George, our Rocky segment today. And Shay, I love how you explain what our Rocky segment is.
Did I explain what a Rocky segment is?
You do every other show when we have one.
Well, a Rocky segment is when we have a client of a law firm of Morris DuPont come on the show with us and share their story, talk about what was the reason that they ended up actually contacting the law firm of Morris DuPont, what their situation was previous to being with the law firm, and then their experience working with the law firm, either through loss mitigation or foreclosure defense, and what the end result was, which is usually a fantastic result. Well, looking forward to the Rocky segment, but for now, I know we're talking to Thomas. He has a friend who's unfortunate, the husband passed away. So, Thomas, who's on the note on this mortgage?
Just him. And she has all the papers. The will was, indicated she was to get the house upon his demise and all like that. But she wasn't actually on the note originally.
Okay, so this is an unfortunate situation that, George, we see this more often than I want to. I don't understand how it is that we've always got these men actually that are on these notes and they're married. The wife typically has to be on the mortgage because a mortgage, which is a secured lien on a property, it would be infringing on their equity interest in the property. So the wife is on the mortgage, but only the husband is on the note. And then unfortunately, the husband passes away and the widow is really in a very bad spot.
Yeah, and unfortunately, we've been dealing with a couple of similar cases recently. And the key to solve that is to assume the note in order to apply for a loan modification. The problem with that is that if you have a property that has negative equity, then it doesn't make any sense to take on this debt that you were not previously responsible for in order to roll the dice essentially to determine whether or not you would even qualify for the loan modification, because unfortunately the bank requires that you assume the note first before you can apply.
Does that make sense, Thomas?
It does. Now, she has plenty of positive equity. That's not an issue.
Then assume.
Assume away.
Then she should assume the mortgage if she can qualify. Sometimes there are some qualifiers to assume, but she can then assume that mortgage, and then the note will be in her name.
How do we get the bank to go with that, though? They don't seem to want to play ball.
Well, you've got to be able to present the death certificate, and if the estate was probated, you have to have the personal representative of the estate contact the lender and do a power of attorney for her to speak directly with the lender.
And if
she sent all the papers in, the death certificate and the will and all that stuff, and then the next thing she knows, she got it from somebody else, and it was under foreclosure.
Right. And if that doesn't work, the assumption process, as another resort, can be filing a Chapter 13 bankruptcy as it's her homestead and using that as a tool to get current on the mortgage.
How would that work?
Well, you are in a Chapter 13. It would stop a foreclosure proceeding on a property and give a widow the amount of time in the bankruptcy, the 3 to 5 years, to get caught up on any arrears that have accrued while making that regular monthly payment.
I like that idea.
Well, great. I think it could be a good option.
How
that sounds like
how past due is the mortgage?
less than a year.
Okay. So she would actually have up to 5 years to get current on less than a year of arrears.
Michelle,
Yeah,
in
right,
the I'm going to ask Michelle, our bankruptcy counselor. Michelle, within the context of the Chapter 13, can the court actually sort of force the lender to cause the assumption to occur?
I don't know that it would necessarily have to occur as an assumption, but because it is her homestead and she has an equitable interest in the property, if she's making good on the loan on the property, that's why it should work.
Oh, I love that solution, Michelle.
I think the question at the heart of the matter is, why does she fall behind in the first place? Is she having financial difficulties? We would have to determine what her income is and how it relates to her qualifications per
And her ability to
guidelines.
afford the mortgage.
Exactly.
I think she should come in for that free consultation to figure out maybe which way she should go here.
I think you're right. Absolutely.
So there are options. Unfortunately, the option that she's used so far hasn't resulted in success, but thank goodness you're talking to, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4 attorneys here that, believe me, we've got plenty more options that might work. And so you can make that consultation call. That's 800-974-2712. Contact the law firm of Morris DuPont and have her give us a call, and we'll schedule an appointment for her to come in, and we'll talk about what we believe her different options are to get that mortgage current, especially when you've got positive equity on the property, either by assuming the mortgage or by doing a Chapter 13. If she's got some other debt that her husband left her, it might be a really great solution.
That sounds like a winner to me. Thank you very much.
All right, Thomas. Well, thanks for the call, and thanks for listening to the show today.
Thank you.
We have time for one more call. Brian.
Hi, Brian.
Hi, how are you doing?
Great. What can we do for you today?
Well, I was just looking for a little bit of guidance and advice. We are a responsible mortgage payer, been current, and I'm not upside down. But I'm seeing all these advantageous rates out there, and I call my bank trying to negotiate a reduction, and like the last caller said, they don't want to play ball.
What's the interest rate you're paying on your mortgage right now?
Paying 5 3/8.
Okay, so not bad, but you could probably get better. And you have positive equity on the property?
Yeah, unfortunately though, it's not enough to do a traditional refi. The bank has I've got under 20% equity.
Okay.
And the bank has suggested something unconventional that I've heard of, or that I heard from them, called I guess it's a mortgage or a lender paid PMI, and they basically charge me a higher premium. They add a premium to the interest rate, and I don't pay PMI. I'm not.
PMI is private mortgage insurance, and typically when your loan to value exceeds 80% of the value of the property, they'll tack on the private mortgage insurance. The problem is that when you're refinancing to lower your payment, let's say you reduce your payment by $300 a month as a result of an interest rate reduction, well, that's going to be offset by, probably the same amount, the PMI charge that they're going to tack on top of it, because now you owe more than 80% of the value of the property.
All right, but let me ask you this, George. When you have the PMI on, will the PMI drop off once you get that 80% LTV?
Yes, once you get below 80%, then it will come off.
Okay. Another option is to actually pay down some principal so you can get that 80% ratio.
Right. Now, that was too much cash for me to bring to the closing that I'm comfortable doing with a baby on the way and the wife not working.
Okay. All right, so that's not an option. And this is not a Fannie or a Freddie loan?
I believe Fannie owns it. It's with U.S. Bank, but I believe it's backed by Fannie. I have already once done a HARP refinance. So.
Oh, okay. So if you did a HARP, then it definitely has to be a Fannie or a Freddie. So assuming it is, I would suggest that you actually go to a mortgage broker to see if a mortgage broker can qualify you, because when you go to a lender, they only have the programs that in-house that they offer. But when you go to a mortgage broker, they have a plethora of different lenders that they work with that could possibly qualify you for, a factor of 10 different programs than one lender could. So I would suggest maybe that you contact a mortgage broker and see if they can find a way to qualify you for a second HARP.
Okay, and what's your feedback on what U.S. Bank did suggest to me? You doing the program with a lender paid PMI?
I think you have to just run the numbers. I think it's a matter of what is my savings going to be versus what is the cost of the PMI going to be and how long am I going to have to pay that PMI? Because sometimes that PMI stays on there even though the ratio goes below 80%. So you've got to be careful and make sure how long am I going to have to carry this PMI? And just really it's a matter of, I think, just crunching numbers.
Okay. And any advice on how I can compel the bank to modify my existing loan? Because that would probably be, in my opinion, that's a win-win for everybody because no one has to go through a new closing and no bank loses the mortgage.
We're going to have to go to a break
I wish
right
it was
now.
that easy. I wish it was. Give us a call. I'll try and help.
1-800-974-2712. 1-800-974-2712. That's the number for the law offices of Morris DuPont. The Home Mortgage Law Show and our infamous, or I should say our famous, Rocky segment right after the break here on the Home Mortgage Law Show.